Hi everybody, I'm Luke Hector from the Broken Meeple. If you like what you see, please remember to thumb up the video, consider subscribing to the channel or the Patreon, but most of all, with these games that I'm talking about today, get those comments below and let me know your thoughts, good and bad, about the games in question. And with my trusty iPad here, this one, you have seen all 10 of these games before. None of them are new, but there's a mixture of stability and some movers and shakers here, so you're going to see a little bit of a surprise. But mainly, I'm just so glad I can record this in normal temperatures now. The heat wave is over. Yes, it's still a bit muggy outside. It's still a little warm in here, but I'm not now going to be dying of heat exhaustion every time I do a video. Ah, thank God it's over. We survived, but at what cost? My number 70 has dropped 10 places from number 60. It is a Thunderworks game, which now takes up a lot of space on the shelf, actually. In fact, yes, it is down there. Yeah, it's in its big, sort of cool box, and big box with 2 expansions in it. And this is basically the one that says, Sagrada, you're a nice little game. Yeah, die. Sagrada, whatever. This is role player, and this is the game I like to play. Role player is basically taking the whole D&D theme and throwing some kind of, a dice game on top of it. And yeah, the theme is kind of abstracted to an extent, but you're building up your D&D character sheet. And with the expansions, you can go off and fight minions. You have a boss to fight at the end of the whole scenario. You can even get familiars, little pets to use, that like a pet for your board. And it really recreates the whole D&D aspect of creating a character and just the wackiness of it in a really cool way. But as a dice puzzle, it's really fun as well. You have the dice and you draft them with the players depending on turn order. Then you can grab different cards that allow you to mitigate the dice rolls from the market, which could be the weapons, scrolls, traits, that sort of thing. And it's just hilarious to see how your character builds up as you play it. Yeah, you started off as an orc ranger, but then he's also a bit of a dumbass, and he doesn't know his left foot from his right foot, but he's very charismatic, but a bit of a pickpocket, and he just happens to have a scroll of magic missile. It's all these weird combinations that you can create, which you can then import into the role player adventures game. Not that I really want to do that, but you can if you're really that devout. But nah, this is still just a really cool dice game that I enjoy. It's dropped 10 places, whoop-de-doo. It's role player, and I still love it. My number 69 has increased 1 place. 1 place, that means it's twice as good as last year. Now, that's not how it works. Whatever, this is basically nice and stable. Now, I've talked a bit recently about John DeClare's recent game, Dead Reckoning, where I say this is pretty good, but I have some issues. It's kind of up and down. But this was the original game that brought him to my attention. It's like, oh, John DeClare, who's this guy there? That is Mystic Vale. Granted, I play it more on the app than I do the physical version because the app is just that good. But the physical version with the Equinox variant that allows you to play 2 tableaus at once each turn, which is quite cool. It's still a good way to play it physically, and you've got a lot of the expansions already there. But this was what brought me to the idea of card crafting. The push your luck aspect of flipping cards off your deck is exactly the same as the one you get in Living Forest. You can check out my review for that if you want more ideas on that. On either, actually, I think I've done reviews on both. But the idea with the card crafting system, I love this thing of, it's not quite deck building, because you don't have like a deck of cards that you add cards to. You have your 20 cards, but what you do is you effectively add these advancements, these like translucent sleeves with effects on them, into the cards themselves, and you create your comborific card of doom, effectively. It's, the theme is neither here or there. It's like druids and magic and fantasy and stuff like that. But it's just great to play a game where you think, that advancement looks cool. I'm going to put that in this card, and then, put that in that card, and then that in that card, and then this card is obscene, but it's only 1 card out of your deck. Maybe I'll space out all the advancements so that loads of my cards have got something cool with them, but both ideas work, it just depends what your strategy is. It's a gorgeous game to look at. It is a bit expensive to get everything for this game. Alderac do not make this a cheap game by any means, but if you want to try the game out, check out the app. The app is brilliant for this. It handles a lot of the bookkeeping, it looks great, it plays well. Mystic Vale is still a really good implementation of this card crafting system. Is it the best one? You'll have to wait and see. My number 68 has climbed 21 places from 89, and I think people are going to flip their lid over this one because Yeah, a lot of you like to hate on this game. A lot. And I thought this game would actually be lower in my top 100, but then as I did a lot of comparisons, I realised, you know what? I've played it a bit recently, and I still really enjoy it. Granted, I know it has flaws, I know it's possibly a slight guilty pleasure, but I'm sorry, I still give a lot of love to Catan. Get out! Get out of there! The expansions for this are kind of what elevate this for me. I've recently got like all that like 5th edition set of Catan, and I've got Catan, I've got Seafarers, I got Cities and Knights, I've got the Traders and Barbarians, and I've got the Explorers and Pirates. So I've basically got the core stuff in my collection on the other shelf. And that, I think, works best. I think, rather than going for the spin-offs, although I am interested in the new one that's coming out later this year, I think, and saying that, Rivals for Catan, the 2 players, really, really good and underrated, but just the idea that I can take the base game and go, you know what, I fancy it with Seafarers today, or I fancy it with Cities and Knights, so you know what, I'm going to throw in the Fishermen and the River from this thing. It's just the fact that I can tailor it to how I want to try it, and I can have a different style of experience, but I still enjoy the interactivity of this game. You roll the dice and you collect resources. Yes, it's effectively a roll and move mechanic. Yes, there are times when you could not roll the numbers you want and you won't get many resources. But it's not like it's that long a game, and there is a little bit of a self-balancing mechanism where, you know, if you are doing well, players are less likely to trade with you. And that's the other aspect. Very few, if any, light games do this trading aspect as well as Catan does. That's what I like. The idea that you are interacting with the other players, talking to them, trying to make deals. Are they entirely fair? Doesn't matter. Am I falling behind a bit? Well, then people are willing to trade with me more because it's not pushing me out further into the lead. I still enjoy it, and I think Catan with Seafarers is still my favourite way to play, but Cities and Knights is still good, if a little bit more like convoluted in places. But, you know, the Traders and Barbarians stuff, you know, the Fishermen and the River, they're really good fun to play with every now and again. In fact, I use the Harbour Master in every game I do. You know, these little variants and tweaks just keep Catan feeling fresh for me. And, yeah, whatever. I like it. Deal with it. It's on my top 100. What are you going to do about it?
We have such sights to show you.
My number 67 has climbed 11 places from 78, and much like Sheriff of Nottingham earlier, I'm not entirely certain why it's climbed. I feel like this one should have been slightly lower, but I felt like, you know what, I still really enjoy it when I play it. It's just been a while since I played it, but God, there was a period when I played this game to death. It is probably one of the better social deduction games that is out there, and that is Deception, Murder, and Hong Kong. Whether I'm playing it with 6 players or 12 players, I think I've done it to, you know, with other things, it's still a really solid game. And what elevates this one a lot above a lot of other social deduction games is that when you play stuff like The Resistance, you start that game off in the same way every time. People go on the first mission, you have no information whatsoever, it succeeds, you just move on to the next one. It's pretty much a write-off those first 5-10 minutes. Well, Deception, you've got the murder suspect, the forensics artist puts out those little clues, and then everybody has information from the get-go. So as soon as they see those clues, they're already pointing the finger going, well, there was no blood on the scene, well, it must have been a blunt trauma to the head. Well, you've got a spanner, that could do it. You've got a brick. Pretty certain you're acting a little bit shifty, and everybody starts making deductions straight away. That is a big advantage for social deduction games, which normally require you to get a ton of information before you can even start pointing the finger. You know, here it just works, and yet it takes some of the best elements out of Resistance, Avalon, and stuff like that, where you have the end game where the witness has to stay hidden away from the murderer, because if the witness is too obvious, the murderer can take them out and the bad guys will still win.
And exactly how many times did he fall out the window?
A sort of bit of a blur, Detective Inspector.
You've got different roles, there's a lot of these different clue cards you can have. Yeah, you know what? I think this is fine to have risen a few places. Maybe it should have been a bit more stable as opposed to have risen or dropped. But yeah, it's still a really good social deduction game and probably one of the best ones on my list. We'll have to wait and see. My number 66 has only dropped 2 places from 64. Big whoop. Wow, you want a pretty complicated mass array of options, and I mean a crazy amount of options with interlinking mechanics as well as player interaction as well as in your face take that mechanics, then this is the game for you. This is definitely not for everybody, but I do have a little bit of a soft spot for some of level 99 games, and this one with some friends of mine who really enjoyed this game. We have a blast and a bit of a raised voice for Argent the Consortium. This is essentially as far... Oh no, they have done heavier games, but this is probably my favourite from their range, and it is essentially the Harry Potter universe in anime style board game. The university dean has gone missing, so you as the teachers want to be the next dean, and you've got these characters who vote on what they want for the next dean. The problem is, it's hidden information. You don't know what it is at the start of the game. And so what you've got is that you send your little wizard workers out to get, like, generate mana and money and get items and get supporters and, you know, do stuff with rooms, you know, all these really cool things throughout the whole university. But throughout the game, as well as collecting all those, you're trying to figure out what those, like, voters want. You get to look at them and in secret from other opponents. Like, I'll flip this one and it's like, they want the most earth spells. Right, well, I better make sure I get some earth spells, but not make it too obvious to the other players that I'm collecting a lot of earth spells. Same for gold, same for mana. Maybe somebody wants all the air magic supporters. Right, well, I'm blatantly going to grab a bunch of those. Somebody wants you to have a ton of consumable potions in your array. Right, well, I'm grabbing these potions. I just like that effect, you know, it's not because the voter wants it, I just want a lot of consumable effects, you know, that's it. It creates a lot of suspicion, a lot of great interaction. It is in your face. You are going to be at each other's throats in this because you can block each other's spaces, you can push them off spaces, you can zap these wizards. You've got to be comfortable with that, and I'm only comfortable with this because I'm playing it with a group of, you know, diehard friends of mine. You know, we can have a blast with this. It's complex, the expansion basically adds even more stuff onto it, although it adds a lot of cool stuff as well. It's a mammoth table space hog, but it's really fun, and one thing about level 99 games is that they are really, really good at getting the theme right when they put their mind to it. The theme in this game is juicy ripe. It feels exactly like an anime Hogwarts show. It's just really cool. You know what? I really would like to play this again soon, but maybe when I'm ready to play with those particular friends. Argent the Consortium, still a hit. My number 65 is dropping, 27 places. That's quite a drop. And I just haven't played it in a while, but I still really enjoy this game. I think it's just because these deduction games, I have to find a lot of time for. It's not something that I can just pick up and play. And certainly, I'm not waning off deduction games, but the idea that they tend to be very long campaigns and take a while is a little bit of a put-off. But this one is still staying strong, and that is Chronicles of Crime, the Lucky Duck version, which is still on my shelf and utilizes the app in a really cool way. It's all about QR codes. You have all the cards, you have the different locations you can go to and the characters you speak to. The app tells you the story, and then you basically go beep, 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 beep. Well, maybe not without the beeps, but you get to scan the QR codes, and it takes you through the story. The stories are cool, the settings are different. I mean, you had the base set. I don't think I've even played all the ones from the base set because they brought out Noir, they brought out a Red View kind of, I don't know, Backstreet Kids version. I'm not quite certain what that was meant to be. I don't think I've played any of that yet. But then they brought out the Chronicles one, so now you've got the like old medieval history one, which has you have a little dog. Then you've got the futuristic-y cyberpunk one, and you've got a 1900s kind of Al Capone style thing. It's great system. I don't play it as much as I kind of used to play it. I mean, I have to be in the mood to play a deduction game. I can't take it apart midway through. I've got to play it from start to finish. I can't just finish midway. And that's one advantage of Chronicles of Crime, because it doesn't take too long to finish a scenario. I wish maybe the whole 3D thing of looking around like the crime scenes was maybe a little less clunky and maybe not so dependent on your chances of victory, because if you miss out one key detail when you're doing that, then you're kind of stuffed for the whole scenario. I wish it was maybe a little bit more obvious what you're looking at, but that blemish aside, it's still wonderfully thematic. It's still a fantastic use of app technology. It's definitely a pioneer for a lot of this sort of thing, you know, app technology and deduction games. Chronicles of Crime may have dropped a bit, but it's still really, really solid and highly recommended if you want a fairly straightforward to get into deduction experience. My 64 has only dropped 3 places. As I said, there were some movers and shakers, but a bit of stability here as well. This is what people like to call Citadel's 2.0. Some people like to say Citadel's is worse than this one. Wrong! We'll get to that maybe later, spoiler alert. But this is the one where the Dice Tower kept talking about this for ages. They said, oh, this game's great, you should play Mission Red Planet. Yeah, when it comes out again, I will. So Fantasy Flight answered that and gave me the 2nd edition, and yes, it's a fantastic game. This game does one of the rare things that a Euro game can do, which is to make it worth playing with 5 or 6 players. Very few games can do that, and this one manages it, and still does it in a quick time. It's area control on Mars. You grab the territories spawn different minerals at different point values, and you're trying to collect the tokens with the majority of people. But how you get on Mars is done by 9 character cards, where everybody simultaneously plays one, flips, does the effect, tries to get their astronauts on ships, which may or may not take off or may not blow up, and you land on the planet and then you start shuffling around, kicking people off and trying to get those minerals.
I claim this planet in the name of the Earth.
It's in your face, you gotta be prepared for that.
I claim this planet in the name of Mars. Isn't that lovely?
But it's very quick. You play through 10 rounds and you're surprised how quick those 10 rounds happen because everything is simultaneous. Yes, more people have to think of what card they want to play, but it doesn't take too long to decide 1 out of 9 characters to play, especially when one of them is mainly just get your cards back. So you're really talking 8 characters for the most part, and even then when you've played a character, you gotta play the level 9 character to get them back. So your choices are more limited until you play that card. It's a wonderful system, it's very well produced, those little astronaut miniatures and the board and the different cardboard pieces and that. It's a really solid production, and I don't hear a lot of people talk about it much anymore. It doesn't seem to hit the table, I don't see it being played, but it's a solid one. And as I say, 5 and 6 player games don't come this good very often. So honestly, give this one a look if you can find a copy of it. Maybe it's out of print, I don't know, but seriously, try and find one. My number 63 has dropped 1 place, which means it's garbage now, and it shouldn't even be on the list. No. Although, I was contemplating whether this should be lower on the list. Not because the game is not great. The game is fantastic. It is a 9 out of 10 wordy, mechanical, game of juiciness. I don't know what to phrase it as, but like I say, it's a really cool game. What hurts it is the fact that, again, it doesn't have the best rulebook Osprey games.
Hello? Hello, anybody home?
And it certainly is quite long. It's basically a solo game and nothing else. It has a few blemishes that do get in the way, but that is a solid game nonetheless. Imperium. Imperium is a definite heavy deck builder. You gather all these different civilizations, all of which play differently.
Remember me!
You're playing a deck building game, you're grabbing new cards and you're trying to accelerate your development deck. And you can win in certain ways, but if you use certain civilizations, they've even got their own unique ways of winning. But it's a really fantastic deck builder. The rulebook is kind of garbage though. Osprey Games, again, get a rulebook editor, as I keep telling you. But honestly, a little shout out here. If you want a better rulebook, go to the Esoteric Order of Games. I'll show it on the page here. They have done a rules summary sheet with a keyword summary sheet as well. Print that out, laminate it, and stick it in your box. Guaranteed, it is a much better rules reviser aid to playing this game than anything else for the game. I have it in my box. Credit to them where it's due. It definitely works. But then also Lizard Den have done a good gaming map for it, so it's a lot more easier to set up solo. So yes, it does require a little bit of a pimping up in order to get into a more comfortable position. Not to mention you've got to play a short variant in order to make certain the game doesn't drag on for ages. So as I say, in its original form, it's a little bit flawed. But the mechanical deck building side of it is so good. I love the variety of civilizations. I love how they feel different. I love the meaty choices you've got, and I like the Miko artwork that's all over it. Loads of stuff is really good about this game. If only they just cracked those other little problems. But The fact that this has not fallen is because I have got those little additions. You know, I've got the Lizard Den playmat, I've got those rules revisers, and it now allows it to stay in this position. Now, with the knowledge that we have another massive box of Civilizations coming out next year, and the fact that I will be able to play this hopefully more often than I usually do because of that playmat and the rules aids that I've got, maybe Imperium could start climbing up the top 100. If we were going to place bets on that, it's quite likely. I think the odds are in the favor. So, like I say, Imperium, still really enjoyed this game. If only it didn't have to pimp it up quite so much. 62 has dropped 16 places from 46. Yeah, that's right, 16 places. And I just haven't played it in a little while, but this is another one of those exceptions to the rule where you think, Luke, a train game? Why would you even be wanting to play a train game? That's not your style, is it? Yeah, but honestly, you could replace trains with pretty much any mode of transportation in this game and it wouldn't matter. But it's not what you're thinking it is. This is not Days of Wonder. This is Bezier Games. This is a cool little game called Whistle Stop.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Whistle Stop is kind of Tsuro if you added more advanced mechanics to it. Essentially, you all have these little trains on one side of the board, and you place these hexes down which have the Tsuro style of windy wibbly paths and stations for resources. You place them down, you create this like insane map like yourself, so it's a different map every game, and you're trying to connect up with the stations in order to grab the resources and then drop them off at these larger town hexes in order to drop them off, get victory points, shares for set collection, that kind of thing. So yeah, not the most entertaining theme. And production quality is kind of blandish. I mean, it looks clean, but it's not exactly production quality to sing home about, and I do wish there was a less fiddly way of like having all the coal piles set up that you give the players every round. Like I say, it could use a couple of tweaks if they were ever going to do a second edition of it. But this kind of put Scott Caputo on the map for me, and this was definitely an exception to the rule, because I played it once at the Games Expo, 3 years later, never saw the game again, then played it again, and like, wow, I like this. And then I grabbed Rocky Road expansion, or Rocky Mountain expansion. God, I must be hungry.
You ever tried shawarma?
Rocky Mountain expansion for it, and that elevated it up as well. Made the setup a little bit more fiddly, but I like having that mountain pass where you can get gold and get even more cool locations and tiles. It's just I think it's the idea that, yes, I'm not a fan of trains, but it's the stock market stuff I'm not a fan of. The whole, I'll get shares and then I'll get dividends, and the whole, like, boring route connection stuff that things like, you know, Ride the Rails and, Irish Gauge, Age of Steam, loans, things like that, the punishing nature of those games, that's what I really don't like. But as I've proven with games like Spike, Pick Up and Deliver is still a mechanic I quite like. I mean, there's another game called Grand Trunk Journey, a little deck builder game. A friend of mine showed me that. I really enjoy it. It's pick up and deliver through and through, and I kind of like the pick up and deliver aspect. But I like the idea that those maps create all sorts of different routes that you can take and create a unique experience each time. So, like I say, those little bits elevate this kind of game for me, and it was a surprise hit for me. It's dropped a bit, but I still give it props. It's still almost in the top half of the top 100, and it's a train game. Some train games do make it for me. Whistle Stop. And finally, I mentioned that we had a big drop of 20-something places. Well, now we have an increase of 21 places. This one has really shut up for me because I've managed to try it just a little bit more often lately, but also possibly another game has kind of made me want to go back to this game in order to play it more, which has kind of helped. But also, I think the expansion did a really good job in buffing this one up. This is the Civilization sequel that Fantasy Flight did called A New Dawn. This one uses one of my favorite mechanics that I've seen in the game, and it's only been used like twice now. It's the focus row, the action row, where you have these different actions that all players can do, but depending where they are on this row dictates how strong they are, what you can do with them. Alright, I'll take the technology action. Right, well, is it on strength 5? Or you can level up 5 places and get a really awesome tech. Is it only on level 1? Well, you can level up a little bit, but maybe that was all you needed and you need to do the action now. I'll let it build up for a bit. Well, what else can I do? Well, if I move my caravans, yeah, that does. And then when you use the action, it goes back to the start and everything shuffles up. This mechanic needs to be in more games, stat.
Everybody got that?
because I really enjoy it. It's a great strategic and tactical planning mechanic that I really enjoy. Now with Civilization: A New Dawn, it's a little abstracted from the whole Sid Meier's thing. You might argue that the 2010 version they did is more thematic. I could probably see where you're going here, but this one was a bit more streamlined, it was easier to play, but it did have some issues, hence it never really got above the 80s usually in the past, 90s even. It might have even fallen off the list at one point. The expansion though, Terra Incognita or whatever it's called, whatever stupid name, that really elevates this game. It firstly makes it an exploration game. The whole map isn't revealed at the start, you have to go find the places, so it feels more authentic. It rewrites the caravan and the army rules pretty much entirely. Like, if you teach this, you are going to have to forget certain rules from the base game because these override them. In fact, it is one of those essential expansions that I do recommend you pick it up with the base game and teach it with the expansion all included without using just the base game rules, because you'll have to forget half the base game rules to use the expansion, so why give yourself that mental problem and just start with the expansion now? So I think with those improvements and the fact that I'm just really enjoying that focus action row has elevated this one further up the top 100. Is it likely to break into the top half? Probably not, but as I say, I think it's great that an expansion has managed to take this game that I already enjoyed and make it truly, truly excellent for me. Not the easiest game to bring to the table, and if I don't play it for so long, I tend to forget a few of the rules, but now that I've got a folded space insert to make it easier to set up, all I gotta do is just keep the rules kind of fresh in my head or arrange it in advance, and I can go, yeah, you know what, I fancy a good dollop of Sid Meier's Civilization without having to be suckered into a 20-hour PC game version of it, because I have no willpower when it comes to the phrase, just one more turn.
Damn, I'm possessed.
That tends to screw me over a lot in these strategy games. But yeah, Civilization: A New Dawn, rising up the ranks, maybe capping out here, but we'll wait and see. So there you have it, another batch of 10 for the top 100. Next time we've got one new game, but other than that you have seen the stuff before, so that tends to happen a lot with the middle of my list. The middle of my list doesn't tend to be the new games, it tends to be the movers and shakers side of things. What tends to happen is that a bunch of new games end up at the bottom where I'm kind of going, yeah, this is pretty cool, or a lot of new games end up really high because I'm like, fantastic, and I'm kind of riding that high, that little adrenaline rush. But in the middle, tends to be more stuff you've seen, and it's a case of, is it improved for me, A New Dawn, or is it dropping a bit for me, Whistle Stop, you know, that kind of thing. So yeah, it's an interesting section nonetheless. But that's it for me. I'll see you on the next Broken Meeple video. If you like what you see, please remember, thumb up the video. Consider subscribing to the channel, well, preferably subscribe to the channel, but maybe consider the Patreon as well. But more importantly, the 10 games I've talked about here, do you love them or hate them? Get them in the comments below and let me know your thoughts, whether you agree or disagree with the points I have raised. Until next time, if you've skipped on ahead, you can go back to the start of my top 100, or better still, why don't you check out the recent Kickstarter video I did where I rant a little bit about value for money with overproduced Kickstarters in my August edition recently. So take care, and remember as always, no matter where they are on your top 100, they're still only games. Bye for now.